This trip has been a little different than the last trip. No, the first thing that happened when we got ready to go was I had added one of those third brake lights that goes into your receiver on your truck. And my truck has the six prong adapter for the trailer. It has one out by the hitch, and then it also has one inside the bed of the truck. And that's where I plug up the fifth wheels inside the bed. That way the cord's not hanging out the back. But I plugged up the fifth wheel, and my electronic brakes wouldn't work. And I couldn't figure it out because I had no problem. We were all ready, dogs in the truck, everybody ready to go. And I had to make them, get out of the truck, go back in the house while I went somewhere into town, close to the house. Just so happens a place that sold trailers, and they had a guy there that knew what he was doing, and he ran through it, and he couldn't figure it out. He just could not figure out why this thing. He had a hot wire that wasn't even supposed to be hot, so he took the brake controller off and put another one on, and which cost me $200. Still wouldn't work. Then I said, well, let's try the plug down by the receiver and see if that might work correctly. And then when I walked back there and I saw that brake light gizmo I'd put on there, I realized what happened. It was shorting it out. I don't know why, but it was. So we took that off and it worked just fine. But almost 3 hours, $200 in 3 hours of our time, which thought us really late getting started. We got started, got going, made it to our first destination for the night, and tired. It was a long day, let me tell you. And we, no problems whatsoever. But when I got up the next morning for us to head out to the second destination, there was a big wet spot under my truck, right at the oil pan, engine area. And I'm like, golly molly, now what? And I looked, and there appeared to be just diesel or oil or something all over the sides of my truck. I mean, it was so bad that it was dripping off the running boards, step boards. And I'm like, gosh, So now I'm in a dilemma. Do I turn around and go back home, or do I go forward? Checked all the fluids, nothing. Nothing was wrong with the fluids. Everything was right where it's supposed to be at. And I thought, Walmart. So I called Walmart and I said, do you change the oil in diesel trucks? And they go, yes, sir, we sure do. I said, okay. And it was like $68 or something. It was really less expensive than I had paid where I had it changed. So I thought, for $68, I'm like 2,000, 3,000 miles out for an oil change anyway. At least this will get it on the rack. Because the problem I was having is it has a skid plate underneath the truck, since it's four-wheel drive, and it's just something to protect the oil pan in case you was to hit a rock or something. So, and I couldn't see anything, behind the skid plate. So, the Walmart folks put it up on their rack or over their pit, and they called me in there and they said, hey, come here, you want to look at this? And I said, shoot, yeah, buddy, I want to look at it. So they let me in. I even got to go down to the pit and look around. And it was everywhere. I mean, it was all over the truck from one end to the other, and it looked like oil. Is what it looked like. But then it kind of had a lot of liquid, more liquid and less oil, And even that guy said, man, he said, nothing's leaking. The plug was good. The filter was good. Everything was good. But it was still coming from that area up around that. It was on the passenger side of the engine, but it was still all up over, it was dripping through the skid plate. So I said, okay, well, that's fine. So, I'm out an oil change. But he said, all your fluids are good? He said, I don't know where it's coming from. I said, I don't either. Real nice guy. So he pulls the truck around, and I'm standing out there. Of course, I had to disconnect, from the fifth wheel right there in the parking lot at Walmart, and he brings it around, and I said, well, let me go in here and pay the girl. And I said, and I appreciate you very much. He goes, no charge. And I go, no charge? He goes, yeah. He goes, I didn't change your oil. He said, you said you was 3,000 miles out and it's not leaking. He said, I didn't figure you want me to change it. And I said, man, I appreciate that. So That was really super great. I got my truck up on a rack and got to look at it, and I was convinced that, it's, I don't know, it was just a fluke or something. I don't know what it was. Whatever it was, one guy said maybe your transmission got warm and overheated, and sometimes those transmissions have a place that they'll kind of regurgitate, the transmission fluid. Of course, but that wasn't what it was. What it was is when I left home, I checked all my fluids, and I thought the radiator needed a little bit more water in the reservoir. And little did I know, I overfilled it. So when the engine got really good and hot, and I'm driving down the highway, that's what happened. It overflowed out the little tube on the reservoir, and it was so hot that when it hit underneath the truck where, your normal dirt and grease and everything is, it just mixed with it, and that's what was coming out. So another mistake I made, but still worried me to death. Didn't cost me anything, but worried me to death. I had to have a good car wash. I had to go do that. I still got it on the front of my RV that because they won't let you wash your RV in a park, and then there's not a place to pull your RV into around here to wash it off. So, so then we got, we're at destination 2 before we get here, and then we get here, and it's just wonderful. It's a nice place, but man, the parking spaces are tiny. Actually, I don't know if you can see it from here. You might be able to see it. I don't know. But anyway, well, I'll give you an example right here. Look at this. This man here is my neighbor. There's his truck over there, because he can't even park his truck without hitting his trailer or being out in the street. And you can see my truck behind his trailer, and I've got it parked sideways in there. And he's taking up a camping spot. He's gonna have to move it if somebody shows up that's got that reserved. But apparently the ranger doesn't care. I guess he hasn't said anything to him about it. So, but this weekend, when all the weekenders were here, gosh, man, I mean, you could just barely drive down the streets here. And these people were bringing in some of these big rigs. And I'm like, how in the world did they get that rig through here? Because you've got to go a certain way. These streets are one way. But then something good happened. When we checked in here, and I did not know this, and it kind of upsets me a little bit because we didn't know it the last time we were here. When we were at Fountain Blue just a month or two ago, is that they have something called a senior pass that is part of the National Park Services. Now, this is a state park. It's not a national park. But when I came in up here at the front gate here to check in, the girl says, "Do you have the senior pass?" And I go, "No, ma'am." But she said it kind of hesitantly, because that's kind of insinuating that I'm 62, And I said, "No, ma'am, I don't." I said, "But I have my mother with me, and she would qualify for it." She said, "Well, you need to get one of them." And I was thinking, yeah, I'll pay for something, that we may use or may not use on a national park. I don't know, She goes, "Sir, we honor that in all state parks in Louisiana and 2 other states." And guess which one? One of them was Arkansas. And I said, "Are you kidding me?" She goes, "No." She said, "Arkansas honors Louisiana, and Louisiana honors Arkansas. And I think the other one's like maybe Maine or something way up." So I was like, "Really?" She goes, "Yeah." I said, "Well, good deal." I said, I thought, 10% or something, that'd be worth getting." She said, "It's only $10. And I said, "Okay, great." And she said, "You save 50%. And I'm saying, 50%? You got to be kidding me. It's going to cost me, right at $800 for 6 weeks staying in these state parks down here." And I'm like, "Man, I'm gonna save $400, She goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Where's the nearest national park at?" And the nearest one was in New Orleans, in the French Quarters, and I didn't want to go back down to the French Quarters, so I looked, and the next one was in Biloxi, Mississippi, and that's about an hour and a half, a little more from here. And I was like, "Man, that'd be great. We'll go to Biloxi, and we'll ride down the coast, and we'll get to see the Gulf and everything like that, and we'll stop and eat and spend $10. And the other good thing about this pass is it expires when you expire, so it's good forever. You don't have to buy it one time. So I'm fixing to go right up there to that little office up there, because you're not going to believe how nice these people are. They said, Rick, if you will, when you get it, if you can get it before you leave here in 2 weeks, bring it up here and we will take and change everything over and refund you half your money back. I'm like, yeah. So, of course, Monday was President's Day, so we couldn't go Monday, but we went yesterday. And I've got a little bit of footage I'll show you that I took off the dash cam. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. And I'm going to try to sit down here as soon as it dries up a little bit more, because it's wet around the campsite. And I've got some stuff that I've been trying to do for months. Some reviews on some equipment, a survival pack that was sent to me by a friend, and it's got so much stuff in it I wouldn't even know where to begin. But I think I've got one that I want to do that I saw him do on one of his videos that I really wanted to try. But you guys, thanks so much for watching, and please stay tuned.